Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Williams, Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion for USTA Eastern. And on behalf of the entire USTA Eastern staff, I'd like to welcome our audience to the first official session of our 2023 Eastern Tennis Conference. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed guests today, USTA Chief Executive Officer Lou Scher and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer Marissa Grimes. I'm welcoming you back, Marissa, for the third time, as this was your first public appearance with our former CEO. So it's great to see you. I'm glad you're able to join us again this year. And I'm now welcoming Lou for the first time in his new role as CEO.
Dave, Lou, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for joining us today. Before we begin, Lou, I'd really like to know if you can just say a couple of words to our audience for our colleagues, our friends, and our families on the West Coast who are reeling from a series of recent tragic events. So you could just make a couple comments for that. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, David, thank you very much. And not just for our colleagues and friends and family on the West Coast, but what's transpired in the past couple of days, just another horrific act and event and seemingly, right, just another difficulty and challenge that we've now experienced for a number of years and seems to be the case. And what I would say is I'm hopeful that we never become numb to these sorts of things, and particularly as it relates to this audience, to any of our friends and family association members that are hurting as a result of this action. Our hearts and thoughts go out, obviously, to them and everyone in the community. Right, we are a sport that is welcoming to all. We are a sport that exists to support the community, support the countries, and when you see events like this that start to tear away at communities, it's really upsetting, and hopefully we can get past this and start talking about much more positive things as an association, as a country, because we're not having to relive this experience, which seems to be continuing at an increasing pace.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Okay, so I'd like to also thank Kristen Semple. She is our integrated brand manager. She's on the line. She's going to help us advance some slides and take some questions, as well as her support manager, Monica Lemura. So first things first, Lou, I want to start with you. Who is Lou Scher? And I want to make sure I'm pronouncing the last name properly. So that's the first question. Is it Scher? Is that how you pronounce it?
Well, actually, it's more like Sonny and Cher for anyone that would remember or remembers the singer. We go with that. But look, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hate this slide, by the way, because I'd much rather talk about the organization and everyone else that I support than myself. But I'm in many ways unfamiliar to the tennis community, but very familiar within the USTA. I've been with the organization for 12 years, leading the commercial side of the organization, largely focused around the US Open and the revenue generation off the US Open. That's broadcast rights businesses, that's our ticketing, hospitality, sponsorship business. And I'm really energized at the opportunity to have a different role now as we think about what I'm focused on, the opportunity to help grow the game, grow the support our mission, and ultimately make the USTA and the association a better place to work, a better place to volunteer in the process. And I'm excited by that. Most of my career previous to the USTA, I'm going back now, obviously 12, 13 years, was in the marketing side of sports. I was with Wilson Sporting Goods in the golf area for a number of years, both in the US and in Japan, and then in the media space, both digital and more traditional forms of media, print, broadcast, radio, etc. And all of those positions, I think, helped me develop an appreciation for partnership and relationships, both internal and external. And as I've come into this role, I can't emphasize that word enough, whether it be the national staff, our section teams, our volunteers, CTAs, district, states. This is a partnership, and we're only effective if we're working together. We can't work in silos, and we certainly can't work against each other. We've got to be supporting one another and aligned in that way. And so I'm pulling on, some of that muscle memory from past roles as we think about ways to optimize the organization and be more effective going forward.
Thanks for sharing that. So when I met you at the Adaptive National Championships, I felt you were very personable, and I felt you had a high level of EQ, right? That emotional quotient. So I wanted to just get a sense of how would you consider your management style? Are you kind of like a democratic leader, hands off, or autocratic? What would you say? Or should I ask Marissa that question?
I was going to say, if I jump off, maybe you can ask Marissa and you'll get an accurate sense. And if you ask my family, you'd probably get a very different answer than the one I'm going to give you. Self-awareness may not be a gift. What I would say is my leadership style, to the extent that I want to try to define it simply, is team-oriented first. I'm very much about building consensus, building alignment, building a team that can support each other, that can compensate. I'm hopeful that it is in no way, shape, or form top-down or dictatorial. I want to recruit and empower the best people that we can and enable them to run businesses. And where I can be helpful as support or be helpful in terms of providing some clarity and direction or resources, that is my role. But I would say team-oriented would probably be the term I would probably most closely associate with the way I've sort of led in the past.
Okay, all right. Thanks for sharing that. And then
if I can say real quick, I would add 3 things: accessible, approachable, and genuine as a leader, for sure.
Right. All right. I love that endorsement.
Check is in the mail. Thank you.
So then you mentioned the family. So on the personal side, you are a family man. I believe you have 2 sons, 2 grown sons.
3 kids total. So 2 grown sons and a daughter. All out of the house now. My youngest is a sophomore in college. I've got one in grad school, and one is actually, speaking of Los Angeles, is teaching school in LA right now. Okay. Social studies to 3rd through 8th grades.
Awesome. And this is a little quick rapid fire question here. So give me your favorite pastime.
Oh, I didn't know these questions were coming. So I would, I guess I'm obligated to say I'm a huge baseball fan, New York Yankees forever. Okay. I enjoy tennis, I enjoy golf, but from childhood, I was a baseball addict.
Okay, and food?
I find myself, now that I'm living in Florida and you're up in New York, I find myself longing for a decent bagel and some decent Chinese food, none of which are available here in Central Florida. Okay,
so you're still a snowbird, so you can come back and forth on that. And then are you reading fiction, nonfiction, or seeing a good movie?
I just went through over Christmas break the entirety of Yellowstone. I think I subscribed to 2 or 3 different services to be able to pull that off, but I've gone through all of that and enjoyed that quite a bit. Obviously, Point Break and tennis. And I'm reading a great book that one of our board members actually sent to me right now about growth mindset as opposed to fixed mindset and institutional growth mindset. Carol Dweck. It's been really enlightening.
I love that. Yep. And that's definitely needed on the DEI side. So, all right. So talking about a growth mindset, let's go into your slides because you have some extremely positive trends to share with respect to the growth of the game.
Yeah. One of my observations coming into this role is we rarely celebrate success. And I think some of that is organizational modesty or humility. We don't want to take credit. And obviously, we can't take credit or full credit for what's happening with our sport, and that credit needs to be shared and shared certainly at the grassroots level more so than the top. But the reality is, we are experiencing extraordinary growth in our sport, growth that we have not touched in generations. And so if you look at the number of players, the most recent information, right, we're up at 23.6 million players across America in 2022. I've been with this organization over a decade, and forever it's been 17, 17 and a half, 18, back to 17 and a half. And we're now talking about 23.6 million players, over 30% growth over the last 3 years. Some of that is COVID, but we're past COVID now. Some of it is people came back for COVID and stuck. People brought their friends in, and we're also seeing greater retention, which we'll talk about on some other slides. But we need to applaud the fact that our sport is growing. It continues to grow, and we're 3 consecutive years now of significant growth. Really exciting to me as well is that growth is coming in the places you'd love it to go. And Kristen, I don't know if you can move forward. If you look at where we're growing, right? You mentioned DE&I, for example. We're growing exactly where you would hope to see that growth coming, right? Youth growth 50% relative to the average, which is 30%. You're seeing Hispanic and Latino players growing at over 60%, and African American Black players growing at almost 44% growth. And I apologize, some of these numbers are 21 because we don't yet have the detail on 22, but there is a trend there that we've seen since 19. So that growth is coming from exactly where we would hope it would come. That growth is coming from where Marissa and her team are trying to chart a path for us to see it come from. But that speaks really well for our future in terms of making tennis look like America and youth. The participation rate continues to grow. The number of core players is the highest number ever at 11.7 million. So almost half of those players are playing often and frequently. And the stat that I think is really interesting, if you look at retention and dropout, we had 6.3 million new players come into the game. You had 5.3 million players leave. Historically, those numbers have been the same, or what you've seen is more players leave than players come into the game. But what that also tells us is that our challenge is not recruiting new players into the game. The challenge for us, or the opportunity for us, is holding on to a higher number. We don't need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't have to bring more people into the sport for the first time. They're coming anyway. We need to do a better job giving them opportunities to play, to stay in the game, better coaching, better formats, more play opportunities, and reduce the churn. All right, that's more controllable for us than whether we get them in the first time. The industry, I don't need to belabor, the industry is seeing the benefits of that growth. They're having the best years we've ever had. Racket sales, string sales, ball sales have been up, despite the fact that we've had supply chain shortages that have impacted all of these businesses. And anyone that's played tennis with any frequency knows what I'm talking about, because you've had a hard time finding tennis balls in pro shops and Dick's and Walmart and those sorts of places. Yet sales are still up despite the shortages. Within the family, what we're seeing is a reverse in what have been negative trends. Membership has increased almost 11% in the past year. Junior membership is up significantly, 30%, right? This is exciting for us. Membership, our goal is not to have more members, but having members allows us to communicate with more players and facilitate play with more players. So we're excited to see those trends. You're also going to see some positive trends around participation in USTA programs. Kristen, if you can jump forward. League play is up. This is the first time in quite a long time. Junior competition numbers are up 36. These are substantial increases, 36% in the past year. We think the new pathway, the 137 pathway, has had an impact there. Increasing number of unique junior players, 18%. So it's not the same players playing, just more tournaments more frequently. So again, this all bodes very well for the health of the sport, the health of the association.
And these phenomenal results really extend over to the US Open, as we're going to see as well.
Right. So I suspect many of our viewers, listeners attended the US Open this past year. And so what I'm going to share is not new news, but we had the most extraordinary event in our history. It was the most successful US Open in our history. Attendance, almost 900,000 fans over the course of 3 weeks. And 3 weeks is important because that first week now, Fan Week, is a huge opportunity to promote our mission and inspired anyone that might be inspired to want to play by having the opportunity to participate in the US Open. But record-breaking attendance, we sold out all 25 sessions in Arthur Ashe for the first time in our history. That carried over into viewership. Our ESPN coverage in the US was up 50% year on year. Again, huge increases in what are very mature, stable businesses. A function of that, or a portion of that, was Serena early in the tournament, but we were seeing double-digit increases in between days when Serena wasn't playing, and that continued throughout. But she did give us a great boost. We also saw it globally, all of our digital platforms, our website, our app, viewership on of our video content, our social media eclipsed 1 billion engagements and interactions. So we, across the board, everything that we track, food and beverage sales, merch sales, attendance, engagement, everything we track was up and up, 20%, 30%, 50%, 60%. You're even seeing a 250% number here. Just extraordinary energy around the US Open.
Mm-hmm. And I know one thing too, there were a record number of honeydews that sold as well. Is that right?
I believe 398,000 honeydews is sold, right?
Wow.
And that's against a 900,000 base. So there clearly a lot of folks had more than one. We know that, and it continues to be a franchise for the US Open, really, and has taken on a lot of energy. It's a great example of a partner promoting it off the grounds, and actually now that is, Wimbledon has strawberries and cream, we have the honeydews, and it is part of the US Open experience. And Fan Week is part of the US Open experience, and you need to think about the Open not as a tennis competition. It is a festival with tennis at the core. What Coachella is for music, we are for tennis. And during that Fan Week, I mentioned free of charge. We had 120, I think almost 120,000 fans come out and participate this year. We had exhibitions with the best players in the world to raise funds for Ukrainian humanitarian assistance. We had a live concert featuring Joe Jonas. You could see all of the top players practice and engage with fans on court. You see Coco here. Serena's practices were open to the public. We had a culinary event featuring all of our celebrity chefs. And then Arthur Ashe Kids Day was also record-setting. We had our highest attendance ever with more than 35,000 fans, participants, families come out and participate in Arthur Ashe Kids Day. And this was the first year ever we did not do a stadium concert for Kids Day. The focus was on music, and yet we were able to attract a record crowd. So we're just feeling great about the energy around Fan Week, and it certainly carries over into the tournament.
Yeah. No, I really like that free access to the grounds and low cost options for people who want to join. And then you showed a picture of the relief efforts for the Ukrainian at 1.2 million.
I'm going to throw a curveball at Marissa here for a second, right? Because we have put more energy and investment and priority around our Be Open platform, which is the US Open's opportunity to have a social impact. And promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the programs here, it wouldn't be fair for me to talk about them because these are Marissa's inspiration and work and hard work. So if you want to maybe comment on some of these, I think it's only fair to celebrate your success and what you brought to the US Open.
Yeah. So before I transition to you, Marissa, I was just going to ask real quick if you can give us any insights on what we can expect, Lou, big this year, if you want to drop any hints or anything, and then I'll ask Marissa the same question.
You are going to see bigger and better, right? The US Open is known as the Spectacular Slam. Spectacular is a high bar. And once you've said it, you then have to eclipse it. And so you will see even more energy put into Fan Week, creating bigger and better experiences, and trying to drive more attendance through Fan Week because we can't take any more fans during the main draw. You will also see a celebration this year of the 50th anniversary of equal prize money. Just think about that for a second. We have offered equal prize money at the US Open for 50 years. That fight is still happening in basketball, in women's soccer, in hockey. Pick your sport, right? No one else can make that claim. And I think a big part of the reason women's tennis has achieved what it has achieved in equal status certainly at the US Open. It's a function of what happened 50 years ago. And so we will have a year-long celebration to promote that, not just because it's the right thing to do, but look at what it's allowed the sport to accomplish. So more to come there.
That's fantastic. So Marissa, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to take over this slide, because we'd love to know what your vision was for having all of these activations and this campaign being so successful.
Yeah, I mean, the first year of the Be Open campaign, I think, many of you are familiar, it really was born out of the protests that were happening in the summer of 2020 after George Floyd was murdered, and the USTA was really looking for a way to authentically represent the community and the movement that was happening, and making sure that we were using our platform and our voice to be able to make a statement around anti-racism and really making sure that people understand that tennis is an inclusive sport that's welcoming to all. So building off of that, when I joined in 2021, I worked very closely with the marketing team to think about how we could continue to expand Be Open. And one of the ways that I felt was important to me as we were sort of emerging from, starting to emerge from the pandemic, the tone in the country was continuing to shift and evolve. One of the things that was important to me was that we think about how we celebrate these communities, right? I think there's always a lot of tragedy, a lot of, I think emotion tied up into social justice and social impact, but I want us to think about ways that we're elevating the voices of diverse communities, and we're shining a light on all of the things that they contribute to this tennis community to make it inclusive and vibrant. And that was really how we created HBCU Live at the US Open, to highlight the contributions that HBCUs have made to tennis. We wanted to think about ways that we could ensure that the LGBTQ+ community felt seen and celebrated and welcome. And so that was the impetus behind creating these particular activations. And so every year now, this will be the third year that we'll hold these activations. We always want to figure out ways we can expand and continue to grow them, but also make sure that we're thinking about all of the other diverse communities within tennis, and that we're shining a light and highlighting those communities and voices as well. So that's what you will see this year.
Awesome. Well said. Thank you. So I believe we're going to cue a video here.
Summer 2022, open. The Big Apple, you know it's open. Need tennis? Open.
We've experienced tremendous growth over the past 3 years, and if you want to talk about Serena's legacy, it's coming from youth. It's also people of color.
Fan week,
Legends on course.
very open. Arthur Ashe Kids Day, woo, open. Opening night, open. HBCU Live, open. Pride, open. Bar, open. Dance floor, open. Let's see what you got. Boredom, closed. Tweeners,
Absolutely awesome tonight.
open. Midnight Magic,
Look out, New York. Coco Mania.
open.
Hold.
Did you see that? Oh my goodness. History books, wide open.
Incredible stuff from Nick Kyrgios.
Memories for life,
Around the post.
open. The 2022 US Open.
Oh, you're on mute, David.
Did you want to spill the tea on anything you have planned coming up this year?
Well, I will just note that we do have dates committed to for both HBCU Live and Pride during the first week of the main draw. So those are committed, but I will save all the other details and surprises or a little bit closer to the event. But we are bringing back both of those events and looking to expand to new events as well. So that's what I'll share for now.
All right, we're looking forward to it. Okay, so these are your slides now. You have a full team in place, right, to support these pillars. And as a section, we're really aligned with these as well now. So I'll let you just kind of take over here. And
Absolutely, yeah. So when I came into the organization now 2 years ago, one of the first things that I wanted to do was really get a sense for the areas that we wanted to focus on and how we were going to continue to grow our DEI strategy. And so I came in and really thought about rebuilding the strategy and rebuilding the team. And the way that I did that was around these 3 strategic pillars: people, communities, and partners. And so I'll talk a little bit about each of the pillars. I'll talk about communities and partners first, and then I think we'll get into more of the people pillar initiatives a little bit later. But going into, thank you, Kristen, going into some of the work that we've been doing around HBCU engagement. So you just saw a little bit of a snippet of HBCU Live that we launched at the US Open 2 years ago. But I also wanted to highlight the fact that we've been really proud about how we have continued to increase our engagement with HBCUs overall, right? So we wanted to make sure that we were building a presence and demonstrating our support for HBCUs and their tennis programs throughout the year. Many HBCUs are severely underfunded, particularly their tennis programs, right? They're just not able to compete with larger schools. And so this was an area that we wanted to make sure that we really showed our commitment to HBCU tennis programs in particular. So a couple of years ago, when we launched HBCU Live, we also launched the David Dinkins HBCU Fund in partnership with the USTA Foundation and USTAU. And through that program, we have been conducting coaching workshops at HBCUs with their tennis teams, as well as any uncertified coaches, to increase the number of diverse coaches. So we all know, I think, and recognize that there is a severe shortage of coaches, but certainly coaches from diverse backgrounds. And so this was an opportunity for us to address that gap and that challenge. And so once those schools complete the coaching workshops, they then become eligible to receive a grant that goes towards supporting their tennis programs. So we're really helping on a number of different levels, helping them build a workforce. Players are able to get summer jobs, coaching. We're able to help address the shortage we have amongst coaches, as well as help fund ongoing tennis programs. And so far we've conducted workshops at 12 HBCUs, a little over 150 participants so far. Specifically with Eastern, I did want to note on the previous slide, we sponsored the HBCU Spring Coming Festival in New York City last year. There aren't any HBCUs in the New York City area, but there are a lot of HBCU alumni. So Spring Coming has become one of the largest gatherings of HBCU alums. And it's really a way for them to be able to, in this New York City area, to gather and celebrate outside of the traditional homecoming season in the fall. And so for years, they held basketball tournaments and featured other sports. Last year was the first time at the festival that we were able to bring tennis to the participants. And so one of the highlights from that is that we were able to establish a scholarship in Althea Gibson's name, where we were able to give a scholarship to a tennis player from Eastern who would be attending an HBCU in the fall. And so that was very exciting for us to be able to participate in, and we plan to sponsor that again this year. And then just lastly, on the HBCU front, we're also working on launching some tennis on campus programs at HBCUs and working to bring back the national championships at the national campus in Orlando this year. So another area, big area of focus for us when it comes to communities is people with disabilities. 15% of Americans have a disability, and the USTA has really been a leader in wheelchair tennis, but there's a huge untapped opportunity to grow adaptive tennis amongst players with intellectual disabilities, blind and low vision, deaf and hard of hearing, standing adaptive. And so we're really focused on building out a more robust strategy around this. We're super excited that we were able to bring back the adaptive national championships at the national campus in Orlando this past November. We had a very strong competitive presence from the Eastern section. And we also have been excited that we've been able to continue to grow the support for adaptive programs. We awarded $35,000 in grants last year and hope to continue to grow that into the future. And then on the next slide, just wanted to highlight another partnership that we've really been working closely with Eastern on, which is Jack and Jill of America. So I think many of you probably have heard us talk about this partnership before, but for those not familiar, Jack and Jill is one of the oldest African-American organizations in the US. Their membership consists of families with children between the ages of 2 and 17, 40,000 families across the US, more than 250 chapters. So really a significant presence and an opportunity for us to work with them on a number of different ways. So we're working with them to increase diverse tennis participation through tennis programs with the sections, including Eastern. We're working with them on tapping into their membership to build a diverse pipeline of staff and volunteers for us. We're working with them to give back to under-resourced communities through different community service projects. There's a lot of great opportunities to connect their efforts with the USTA Foundation and the section foundations. And then just on this slide, this is just one example of how we incorporated Jack and Jill into our activities at the US Open. One of the Jack and Jill kids was actually able to participate as a kid caster for US Open, had a fantastic time, as you can see, was able to hang out with Coco for a little bit. And it's just ways in which not only are we bringing diverse participants into the sport, right? Lou talked about, we have no problem bringing in new participants, it's keeping them. So this is a way for us to retain these participants, keep them engaged in a number of different ways through different opportunities. And then on the next slide, I really, in particular, from a Jack and Jill perspective, wanted to highlight the work that Eastern has been doing. I stole these slides shamelessly from David because they've really been able to take our national partnership and run with it at the local level, which is exactly what we had hoped would happen when we launched it. I love the way that Eastern has laid out all of the different elements and levers they're pulling, and how they've really quantified the value of the partnership, right? The ways in which they're keeping them engaged. So I'm not going to go through all of this on the slide, but just, calling out a couple of items like the level 1 coaching, right? And officiating certification. These are ways that we can start to pull in Jack and Jill into different ways to help support our business and strategy in areas of need as we continue to grow our mission and our strategy with the USTA. And next slide, similarly, right, US Open, just a number of different ways that we're engaging with them. So really excited about the work we've been able to do.
That's great. Thank you for that. Yeah, they've been a tremendous resource for recruiting, promotion, engagement, networking, everything. So we're very happy with the partnership. And I even have a new team member as a result of the partnership, Denisha Boston Hill, who's representing our strategic partnerships in GTL network. So it's been great. Okay, so cue the dramatic music because now we have to talk about something very, very serious. Pickleball. It's having a major impact in the section, and we need to understand, should we be treating them as a competitive or friendly competitor, or, because they're definitely a disruptive innovator. So how should we be looking at pickleball?
Yeah, David, there are two potential major disruptions from an organizational standpoint. Pickleball and its impact on the tennis ecosystem is certainly one, and disruption brings opportunity and challenges both. The other one we'll talk about in a second is what's happening on the pro side of the game and what we're seeing in golf and other sports where there's some potential disruption, significant disruption there as well. Pickleball is really interesting. So first and foremost, what everyone needs to understand is this is not a zero-sum situation, right? Pickleball has experienced extraordinary growth, but guess what? Tennis is growing as well. Pickleball players are not pulling tennis players out of the tennis universe. In fact, many of the pickleball players are playing both. Some of the positives associated with pickleball, if we're a health and wellness organization that believes in that sport can improve and recreation can improve the quality of someone's life and their health, seeing people be out and moving on a pickleball court is not is not a bad thing, right? If our values are what we say our values are. Seeing a tennis facility have more traffic through the snack bar, the pro shop, a tennis coach who might be dual trained that can make a better living because they're teaching both. There's a lot of pressure on tennis facilities and the value of their real estate, particularly in more congested areas like you see in the eastern section. So to the extent that they become more vibrant, more profitable, that's good and healthy for the tennis ecosystem. And again, we're seeing growth, and we're seeing growth happen in parallel. Where pickleball starts to be a real threat for us as a sport is when courts are being flipped from tennis courts to pickleball courts without data to support, right? So we know that tennis is growing. We know there aren't enough tennis courts in America, and in many markets, there are not enough tennis courts to support the demand. And yet, just by virtue of optics, well, we have 8 tennis courts. Why don't we have 6 tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts? That feels fair. Well, 8 was never enough to begin with. When girls softball grew in popularity, you didn't see baseball fields being flipped. You saw new softball fields being built. And that's the message that we need to start to deliver, and deliver at a very local level. This is not Good Morning America. This is a message that needs to be sent to park and rec associations, right? Municipal, town hall meetings, those sorts of things. Tennis is growing. There isn't enough courts to support tennis as it exists today. And oh, by the way, which we'll talk about in a second, tennis is the healthiest sport you can play, bar none, and adds more longevity. Pickleball, cycling, running, jogging, whatever. Tennis is a healthier activity from a longevity standpoint. We need to tell that story. We need to put more resources behind aligning our organization to tell that story. And oh, by the way, as pickleball courts are being built, if we can figure out how to play a great red ball tennis game on a 44-foot pickleball court, maybe it's not a pickleball court any longer, because there are challenges with pickleball. And if juniors start playing on those courts and seniors start continuing to play tennis or learning to play tennis on a 44-foot court, imagine all of the opportunities that get created from a facility standpoint, because there will be thousands of pickleball courts constructed across America. And that's an opportunity for us, again, talk about growth mindset. If we think about ourselves differently and try to take advantage of that opportunity, I'm excited by that. So pickleball is a threat, but at the same time, it also has some really strong positives that can help. And what we've seen is that we're growing at the same time they're growing. This does not have to be a zero-sum proposition. Moving off from pickleball, anyone who's paying attention to professional sports, and particularly individual sports, is seeing what's happening in golf. And you're seeing the best golfers in the world being picked off from the PGA Tour and being courted by a new sort of global live golf tour. And what that does is it diminishes or waters down the quality of that professional product, makes it harder for a fan to stay engaged in the sport. At the same time, it might actually elevate the importance of a Grand Slam or a major, because that's the only place you would see these players come together in the future, which may be an opportunity for us. But tennis is ripe for a similar type of disruption. The current product is not optimized for fan deliveries. There's too many events. There's too many players. There's a lot of opportunity for someone to deliver a better product. Not all events are combined. And the formula that works for the Grand Slams isn't necessarily carried out around the world. And so we think there may be an opportunity there, but we have to prepare for an eventuality where there is some outside disruption to the professional space, and make sure that we can continue to deliver for fans the best experience possible through not only the US Open, but all of the Grand Slam events, and hopefully influence the direction of professional tennis in a way that allows fans to enjoy the game more and elevates the revenue opportunities, the commercial opportunities associated with the game in the process.
Right. Now you touched on the life expectancy of tennis players, and New York Times had the article coming up in the next slide. So this is really, really profound here.
Yeah, look, if I can leave our viewers with any message, right? The message needs to be that tennis is the ideal sport to benefit life expectancy, for longevity. There is no sport that compares to us versus the sedentary lifestyle. We add 10 years to your life expectancy versus any other sport, with the exception of badminton. You're talking about more than 5 years added to your life expectancy. You don't have to be a great salesperson to sell 5 years of additional life, right? And we need to talk about ourselves as a health and wellness organization and sport. We often talk about tennis. We love tennis. We think you should love it too. Our mission is to grow the game. But this is not just about tennis players wanting others to enjoy tennis. This is an opportunity for people to improve their health and wellness and their life expectancy. And if you think about the excitement around companies like SoulCycle and Peloton and green drinks and kale this and whatever it is, those people believe they are improving people's lives, changing people's lives. We have a better story than any of them to tell, and we need to think about ourselves in that way against all communities, right? We can impact life expectancy unlike any other. That message needs to be said loud. That will help us as we go try to fight for courts. That will help us as we try to attract people into the game, juniors into the game. It's a critical message that we've not told, and now we have documentation.
Yeah, no, this is great stuff. So the next few slides I'd like you to cover quickly. So we're talking about with demand, having enough coaches and officials and facilities to support those demographics.
And we've touched on a number of these things already on this call, right? There are some priorities for us in the association, and many of them are being triggered by the growth that we've experienced, and that has put demand on the coaching community. We don't have enough coaches. People are talking about signing up on wait lists to get lessons and things we've not seen in our lifetimes yet. There's a huge opportunity there. If we can introduce more coaches into the ecosystem and at all levels, not just, certified high performance professional coaches, moms and dads that can introduce the sport to young kids playing it for the first time on a driveway, on a short court, whatever the case may be. We need more coaches across America at all levels. We need more officials to support our events, right? There are more events, more participants. We need to support that. And officials that can make sure we have a good experience. That speaks to the desire to minimize the turnover and the churn. And we need more courts. We need more courts. We need more indoor courts, period. And that's an expensive proposition. And we need to make sure we're not losing courts in the process. So you'll see those continue to be major priorities for us as we go forward in the new year.
Great.
Safe sport will always be a major concern for us as an organization and as a sport. We need to make sure that we are providing safe opportunities to play. And this is not just because we've seen horrible lawsuits where bad behavior can cripple organizations. This is about keeping kids safe, keeping women in our sport, others in our sport, making sure that we're welcoming, but that we're keeping everybody safe. And that means you've got to be safe sport compliant if you're touching this sport in any meaningful way, and if you're involved with kids playing this sport. This will never not be a priority for us.
Absolutely. We've made that a requirement of our grant recipients, so there is definitely an importance there.
Yeah. Brian Hainline, our new president and board chair, spoke very passionately. I think, David, you were there in January at our leadership meeting about access and the importance of access and making sure that there are tennis courts in every park. In fact, he's challenged us with a goal to make sure there is a tennis court in every public park, right? Supporting park and rec programs, supporting school programs will be critical for us to make sure that there is access to courts, access to equipment, access to instruction. So that will be the vehicle, if you will, that we will try to work through to grow the game.
Yeah, and according to Brian's report last, tennis is in 20,000 schools and 5.9 million or 5.9 children have access to the sport. 5.9 million children with access to the sport, which is fantastic. USTA Foundation also extending its impact.
Just doing extraordinary work, right? When I started at the USTA, and I'm not taking any credit, it's just a marker in time. When I started at the USTA in 2007 or so, we were distributing less than $1 million a year in grant money. I think in 2013 we hit like 750,000, 800,000. Last year in 2022, we distributed over $8 million worth of grants. So you're talking about, a 10-fold increase in impact, not just in grants, but kids and capacity through the NJTL chapters. And the trajectory is just continuing. We're having more and more success. Hopefully everybody saw the Jersey Mike's commercials during the US Open. Jersey Mike's contributed more than $4 million to the USTA Foundation through their percent off or percent up, 20% of purchases made over that weekend. So just extraordinary energy and opportunities being created as a result of the work at our foundation. Incredible efforts, and makes you feel great about being a part of the USTA and what we're trying to do.
Really does, yeah. Stats again, 125,000 youth are impacted and over 300 NJTL chapters across the country. So that's fantastic. All right. So all of this is to help ensure our financial strength going forward and some of our opportunities that we
Yeah, we'll fly through these really quickly. Look, as an organization, or certainly as a national organization, we have an obligation to ensure our financial health. A lot of that is driven off the US Open, and there's work there. We've had great success in the past year with adoption of the new World Tennis number as a free alternative to what has been sort of the UTR rating, and a number that will be utilized all across the world by all federations. And so we're very excited by that. And that will help facilitate level-based play, which is going to be critically important as we think about the future. Not everything has to be age and ranking based. We should be looking at level-based play. It will also give us a mechanisms to start to capture data that will enable us to help everyone in the ecosystem grow their programs, their business, their participation, right? This is not a commercial strategy. This is about connecting players with other players, connecting players with providers, connecting events with attendees, ticket buyers, participants, connecting players to programs, all of that. Once we have the data, we can start to help others market more effectively to their target audiences. Huge opportunity and priority for us.
Great.
Data, I spoke about the value of data, and as we go forward in the future, our ability to grow the game is going to be as dependent on our ability to leverage a phone as much as a court, right? We need to be able to deliver content and connect players through data and technology.
We've been working with a lot in that space as well. So, league has 85,000 players,
correct,
right? And now we'll have a chance to know exactly who they are, who these players are from a demographic standpoint, and tournament directors and everyone.
And then not just know who they are, but now start to be able to share that information with providers and others in the ecosystem and help them better target potential participants. Christian, you can jump ahead. You're also, David, you're a part of this. You're seeing us try to recast our approach. I saw there was a question, I think, in the chat about strategies for adult play. What I want to stress to this group is I believe very passionately that those closest to the ground are best equipped to build the strategies for how we're going to grow the game. And the challenges and opportunities in Eastern are very different than they are in SoCal, in Florida, or in other parts of the country. And so reshaping how we conduct ourselves, how we support the sections, so that national is of service to those at the ground level who are building the strategies and executing programs to grow the game is an important priority for me and for the opportunity. We're not going to push programs out from the center that will grow the sport equally across the country. What we want to do is make sure that on the ground in Eastern, you're building the strategies that will be most effective for you, and then asking for the resources from national to support those efforts. It's a mindset change for us. Energizing our culture. This call is an example of it. Marissa is in the center of this every day. We need to be a passionate, purpose-led organization. This is not tennis for tennis lovers, and you should like tennis too. We need to be passionate about our reason for being, which is we're improving people's lives. That is something that can help us attract new staff. That is something that can attract new volunteers, that can attract new players. The health and wellness aspect of who we are and being welcoming to all. the equity, the inclusion, the diversity aspect of that puts us in a great position to attract, engage, and retain the best and the brightest, both from staff, volunteers, and participants, because that is what people are looking at today. They're looking for higher purpose and more meaning to what they're doing, and I think we have a story that is second to none.
Yeah, and before we get to some questions from the audience, I'd just like Marissa to cover as well, quickly her perspective on culture and the things that she's doing there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think Lou said it really well. I think for us, it's about how we're embedding DEI across our entire association, right? So when we think about DEI, the solution to really seeing the shift that we want, it's not going to be through programs, it's through our structures, through our systems, through our habits, behaviors, right? So that's our strategy, to think about things like our leadership and organizational structure, the work that Lou is doing in terms of bringing in someone to lead section partnerships and people and culture. Those things can be game changers for us and enable us to really embed DEI across the organization the way that we want. Thinking about our core processes and systems, right? Inclusive hiring practices, the way that people apply for, and the selection process around committees and council members. This year, going into this term, was the most inclusive it's ever been, and that was by design. That was intentional, right? We conducted a pay equity review amongst the national staff, and I know some of the sections are looking to do that as well. So it's really about thinking about how we continue to think about what we want to stand for, our values as an organization, behaviors that we want to foster within our organization, and making sure that those are embedded in our business practices, into our business objectives, into our systems, our policies, all of that, to ensure that it's really permeating the organization in the way that we want.
Many employees in the sections now have had a chance to join the business resource groups, right, which are inherently business groups, but at the same time, they can help solve business problems. So that's also been a really windfall for us.
Absolutely, 100%. And just to quickly on this slide, I just wanted to highlight, right, when we think about inclusive leadership and building an inclusive culture, we should think about inclusion as a leadership skill. So it's not one and done trainings, right? It's not a check the box. This is really a muscle that needs to continue to be strengthened and maintained. And so for us, it's about providing ongoing opportunities for education, not only for awareness, but really to put it into action. The BRGs are instrumental in that, in helping to integrate that across the organization as well, both at the national and section level. And that's really, again, part of how we build an inclusive culture and retain the diverse communities that we want in our sport.
Right. Okay. So I have a note at the bottom here, because we talked about culture, and I think this new individual, this new appointment, is really going to help, optimize that entire, structure, right?
Yeah, so we made an announcement last week about a new hire, a new position within the organization. We have created a chief people and culture role. A lot of this came out of the work that Marissa and her team were doing around looking at culture, primarily through a DE&I lens, and realizing that you can't separate people from your culture and your approach to culture. They're all together. The other thing that we're doing is extending the purview of this role, right? We want this position to be not just focused on the national staff. This is not HR for the national staff. We want this person to be thinking about how we support our people at the section level, how we support our volunteers, recruit, attract, retain the best potential volunteers. Anyone else who might be a provider in the ecosystem, how do we share learnings that will help empower our culture and reinforce the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm very excited. His name is Henry Lascal. He'll be starting in the first week of February. It comes from 30-year background with some great organizations focused around empowering people and staffs. And he's hugely energized. He'll be based in the Florida office. And I think teamed with Marissa, who you've seen on this call, is just so excellent and fantastic at what she does. I think we will have a formidable team that will help not only energize the association top to bottom, but will focus us on our values and what really matters.
Okay, awesome. All right, so real quickly, we know this is good. Tennis is good for you, and I want to see if there are any questions that have come in from the audience. And I believe, Monica, you might have some, or Kristen.
Sure. Yep. So there's one more that hasn't been addressed in the chat that I'll just read aloud. Thinking about the violence of last week and how much of tennis is played in open spaces with fierce competitors and people from all walks of life. Can you speak to how we, meaning staff, volunteers, and players, can ensure as much as possible that we can keep these spaces safe?
Yeah, that's a really good and a tough question, right? One of our challenges as an organization is we don't necessarily control the facilities that we're playing in. It speaks to the need for more officials and folks on site. It speaks to the need not only safe sport compliance, but background checks for anyone that's involved in our sport, which is important. Having said that, this is a much larger, right? This is an all public spaces sort of issue. You could say the same thing about malls and schools, obviously we've seen, and others. I suspect security around our events will become a bigger topic for us as we think about our role as an association going forward, and will occupy sort of more time and energy. Marissa, feel free to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've been, thinking about as we have been rolling out different trainings for officials and for tournament directors and others is, providing them with the tools to also learn how to manage conflict, how to de-escalate situations, right? Making sure that they're modeling the behaviors that we want to see reflected from a sportsmanship standpoint and things like that. But yeah, I mean, this is a much larger, broader issue. And it really shouldn't just be the responsibility, right, of staff and volunteers and folks within our community who are helping to manage and control these situations. So it is very complicated, but we want to make sure that at a minimum, folks who are working at these tournaments, that we're thinking about how we can provide them with the right tools to be able to manage a situation, and then be able to call in the appropriate folks who can help when needed.
Yeah, no, thank you, Martha. Hey, David, I'll just add one other point. At the U.S. Open this year, we didn't spotlight it because it was happening behind the scenes. We held the first mental health summit amongst the tennis industry and professionals, and that was spearheaded by Brian Hainline. One of the outcomes of that was a recognition of not only the need for more resource and more support around mental health at the professional level, but even as you think about operating events, the need for mental health emergency training and manuals in the same way you would with a physical health issue along those lines. And so you are going to see much more focus around making sure that we are prepared for mental health emergencies. The initial focus was on the players, but I think given recent events, you're going to see that extend to things that might take place with crowds and others.
That's helpful. We are at the hour mark, and Monica, I don't know if you had any other pressing questions, but if not, what we'll do is just capture those and make sure we get answers out after the meeting.
Yes, that sounds great.
That sounds okay. Okay, so what I want to do is thank everyone here. We are going to show one more video, quick video from our greatest of all time. And we will gonna come back on the other end. We want to say some more thank you. And just make sure that you do a survey for us. So go ahead, you can run that video, Kristen. Thank you.
From the public courts of Compton, California, to U.S. Open champion. What a journey it's been for Serena and the entire Williams family.
What's there to say? The years went by in a blink. 98 feels like yesterday. You've given us so much. All we can do is thank you. Thank you for making the bright lights brighter and the Big Apple bigger. Thank you for showing us how to be graceful, powerful, fearless. Thank you for dressing to the nines and bringing your dancing shoes. Thank you for turning center court into center stage. For bringing the house down. Thank you for showing us what it means to come back and for never, ever backing down. Thank you for changing the face of the game, for inspiring the next generation. Thank you for thinking outside the lines and encouraging us to evolve. Thank you for showing us how to love the sport and for always loving us back. Just know, whatever you do next, we'll be watching. With love, all of us.
All right. So once again, I'd like to thank our audience for being here with us today. I'd like to thank our special guests, Lou and Marissa, for joining us, Kristen and Monica for helping to field the questions, and Jenny Schnitzer, our executive director and support manager. Thank you for your support for this. And Olga Harvey is our new board president. So we thank you for your questions and support as well. Please fill out this mentees.com survey for us. We'd love to get your feedback. And as I mentioned, if you did have a question, we can collect them. We'll make sure we have them captured in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we respond to you. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Have a good day.